Coming to you from Milwaukee, Wisconsin by way of Stone Mountain, Georgia. Birthed by the great state of South Carolina is the Bryant Land Country Podcast. Your place for any and everything in hunting, fishing, sports, and outdoor related. With heavy doses of randomness, guests, and an all-around good time. Here's your host, proud Gamecock, South Carolina forever, AB3.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Bryant Land Country Podcast. I am your host, AB3, and I am back on the road. Now, if the audio is not up to the quality that you're used to hearing from the Bryant Land Country Podcast, I do apologize in advance. But like I said, I'm back on the road. I'm back recording in hotel rooms. Not quite the sound that I like, but I got to get this podcast done, and I got to get to work, and get back out here and earn a living. So I've been off for a few weeks. I got back on the road this past weekend, did some FS1 baseball. That's Fox Sports 1, Major League Baseball in Detroit. Had one hell of a game yesterday between the Tigers and the Washington Nationals. Had a wonderful broadcast. Got to work with a producer that I crossed paths with earlier in my career. I actually probably about 13 years ago, sometime around 2006, I actually went and observed the director and the associate director of one of the games that this producer was working on, and lo and behold, 13 years later, he and I are working together. So that was kind of cool for me. That was, it was a very great experience. Shout out to Bo Garrett, my producer yesterday for baseball in Detroit. Another good thing about being in Detroit, after the game, I got to hang out with Bernie and his lovely wife, Tarji. If you remember, Bernie Samuels is from the episode Old Friends, the Old Friends episode of the Bryant Land Country Podcast. Every time I go to Detroit, we get to hang out. A lot of times it's just family, hanging out with him. Like I said, his lovely wife, Tarji, the kids. And they always, take care of me whenever I'm there in Detroit. So last night we had a chance to get out. And Saturday night, by the time you guys listen to this, we had a chance to get out, just an adult night out, hang out, enjoy ourselves, no kids, and then take in the sights of Detroit. And let me tell you, the sights, the people of Detroit did not disappoint. There's a lot of things going on downtown in Detroit. They're, pushing out a lot of the old and in with the new, if you know what I mean there. And so you get some very eclectic and interesting looking people that are down there in the nightlife in Detroit. So we had a good time. Like I said, it's always great when I get a chance to hang out with them. Going to Detroit, had a great crew on the broadcast, and I got to hang out, with some great friends. So that makes for a great day for me. Now, as for the podcast this summer, a lot of the episodes here coming up, the last episode, or should I say, I guess the episodes here in July. I'm looking at my calendar, and today is actually the last day of June as I'm recording this. So when this first episode drops, we'll be in July. And, in July, I can tell you guys it's going to be a few short episodes with me just covering some topics, some things that I've been through in my hunting career, some stories, some experiences that I'm going to share with y'all. We're going to try to get a couple of interviews in July, but basically, you guys have done a great job supporting the podcast, but it's summertime. I want to do some things with my kids when I have some time off. After I finish this stretch of work, I'm going to have some time off to get some stuff done on my property and hang out with my kids. So, I'm going to still give you the great podcast that you've gotten accustomed to so far this year. Just may not be with as many guests through July. And then when August hits, obviously we're going to be talking about deer and deer hunting. So we're going to get some guys on here that's going after them deer real hard, get some tips, get some stories, gearing up, getting ready for deer season. I mean, hell, August will be here before you know it. And deer season opens in South Carolina in August, and then right back in Georgia in September. I think the second week of September, if I remember correctly. I was looking at my calendar the other day because I'm trying to figure out how I want to plan my hunts coming up for the deer season this year. So, like I said, July is going to be me and more me stories, some things that I've kind of, like I said, went through myself doing my hunting career, and just stuff I've kind of figured out on my own through trial and error. And experience is the best teacher, as we all know. So we're going to cover those things, like I said, and then we're going to try to get maybe one or two guests in July, and then when August hits, boom, we're going to go right into deer season. Now, in this episode, I want to talk about my first hunt. And, I know for a fact, like, on this podcast, I haven't talked much, about a lot of the hunts that I've been on. I covered my turkey hunt this year when I finally got a turkey after 4 opportunities. I only had like 4 chances to get out turkey hunting, and God bless it, I only was able to, be successful on one of them. But I want to talk about today in this episode my first hunt. And my first hunt was in October. It was a hog hunt down in South Georgia, and man, I was excited. My son came with me. It was a bow hunt. We went out with a fella down in South Georgia, Bubba Addison. He took us out, and he ran the dogs, had a great pack of hounds that flushed out a very nice hog for us, and we got to put the damage down with a bow. But like I said, it was back in October of 2015, and man, it was great. Like I said, we got up, me and my son, we got up at probably about 4 a.m. We left our house, made the drive down outside of Macon, near the Okmulgee swamps down in South Georgia. And I mean, by the time, we got down there, got everything set up, I mean, just being in those swamps down there and having those hogs, I mean, we got on the back of ATV, we rode into the spot, where he had already had some hogs, that scouted out, that showed sign that they were down there. So, like I said, we took the ride down there. Man, I just remember, we were riding down, and those dogs were yapping. They were yapping and yapping and yapping, and just barking and yapping and barking and yapping. And I'm looking at my son. He's looking at me, and, our blood is boiling. Our blood's getting boiling. Hair standing up on your arm. I mean, you're getting excited, adrenaline pumping. And I mean, we get to the destination. We stop. He lets the dogs out, and all of a sudden there's a silence. And I mean, it was a quick silence. I mean, you could hear almost a leaf drop right on the ground out there. Opens up the container for the hounds, let them out, and they just take off. Silence. So we're kind of, waiting around, waiting to see what happens. We saw, one hog kind of like cross the road, like maybe 600-700 yards down the road. And then we waited like another couple minutes. We was just kind of walking around a little bit. And then next thing you know, you just hear the dogs going off again. They were going off. Well, they were going off because they got on a hog. And we're running through the woods, trying to catch up with them. And if you've never hunted hogs with dogs, man, I'm telling you, I recommend you doing that. If you've never done it before, it is probably, in my opinion, one of the top bucket list things that I suggest that you do, because man, once them dogs start yapping, and like I said, that silence turns into them yapping and going after the hogs, man, it is a sight to see. So we're running through the woods, we're getting, going through thickets and all this kind of stuff, running through mud and, pits and puddles and all kind of other stuff. And then finally we caught up with the dogs and they had the hog bayed. Now, like I said, in the situation like that, he had hounds. So they weren't catch pits. Some people, when they run dogs on hogs, they have catch pits, and the dogs will go and they'll grab, the hogs by the ear, get a hold on them, and, you can go in with a knife and stab the hog, finish them off, get in real nice and up close and personal. Like I said, we had hounds that day. So the hounds just bayed up the hog, and the hogs are nipping. He's nipping at the dogs, but basically his attention was on the pack of dogs. They weren't worried about me. They weren't worried about what we were doing. So we get in there, so now this hog, obviously is pissed, and we got to get him down. So, I get in maybe 10, 15 yards, draw back my bow. First time I've ever drawn back my bow on a live animal, and after months and months and months of practicing, moment's here. All right, I'm getting ready to draw my bow back, getting ready to take a shot. Man, we're going to put this animal down. It's time to go home now. Man, I let that arrow through. I let that arrow fly. And I thought that I was aiming, right behind the shoulder, nice double lung action. Man, that thing went right through his neck. And honestly, it happened so fast, I didn't even realize that it went through his neck until we recovered it. But, like I said, I had practice. I practiced, ready for the moment, and with the adrenaline and running and everything, and I draw back. I thought I had a perfect shot, double lung pass through. Nope, right through his neck, pass through. Hog went maybe another 15, 20 yards and piled up. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was how I got my first hog on my first hunt. And it was an exciting time, man. It was exciting. But like I said, it happened so fast, and the adrenaline, build up was just tremendous. And it just goes to show, man, you can practice. We worry as bow hunters, we worry about so many things. And, we want to try to be over prepared almost. And, we always talk about being ready for the moment and being, prepared and all this other stuff. But man, when that moment of truth comes, when it comes time, when it's go time, when it's business time, and you got to put an animal down, all that stuff kind of goes out the window. You gotta try to collect yourself, make the shot, and then so you can do what you got to do and get that animal. So I was very fortunate. And another thing, when you're doing a bow hunt, when you're running dogs, another thing that, I know that was in the back of my mind the entire time was, golly, man, I do not want to hit one of this man's dogs. And a lot of people will not let you bow hunt, when you're running dogs for that same reason. But, thank goodness I wasn't reckless. Dogs, obviously, hell, they knew what they were doing a lot better than what I was doing. But, we got it done. I didn't injure, any of the dogs. The dogs had a few cuts on them from the bull, from the boar hog. And it's amazing how, fast those animals, they stick and move. Like, I had no idea that some of those dogs had got cut up as bad as they did. But, man, they stick and move. And so, like I said, I drew back, put the broadhead, through the neck, got the hog down. My son was there with me. It was a great time. We dragged the hog out of the swamp, got him back to the shed, skinned him, cut him up. My son got a chance to, for the first time, help, in skinning the hog and cutting him up and things like that. So, it was just a really great bonding experience. It's something that I look forward to doing it again. It was just, it was a great time. And that is basically how it happened on my first hunt. And since that day, in October of 2015, since that day, I've been hooked. And it's been well documented. I've gone on to duck hunt, goose hunt, obviously deer hunt, deer, hogs, and turkeys with a bow, duck and goose hunt with a shotgun. And, like I said, that was the day that I officially became hooked. It was the first day that I got to draw back on an animal, make a kill, bring the animal home, get them taken care of, all that good stuff. And that hooked me ever since. So, when you start listening to this podcast, man, feel free to drop me an email, ab3bryantland@gmail.com, ab3bryantland@gmail.com. Drop me an email. I'd love to hear about your first hunt. I'd love to hear the stories, memories that you guys and gals have had about the first time that you went on a hunt, the first time, that you were able to harvest an animal, make a kill. And it doesn't have to be with a bow. It could be with a rifle. It could be, when you're out duck hunting with a shotgun, whatever, predator hunt. It doesn't matter, what kind of hunt it was. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a bow hunt, but I would love to hear from y'all, either, like I said, an email, send us an instant message or a direct message on Instagram, at official Bryant Land. But man, I would love to hear stories and love for you guys to share the story of your first hunt. So hit me up, like I said, ab3bryantland@gmail.com or on Instagram at official Bryant Land. Now, if you're anything like me, the good thing about these summer podcasts that I'm doing, where I'm discussing a couple topics here and there, is that they won't be that long. You can get some quality podcast audio, listen to it, get in, consume it, and then get back out. So these summer format podcasts, like I said, they're going to be a little bit different. I'm going to cover a couple topics. I think next week I'm going to just talk about my experience with food plots over the last few years. And then, maybe we'll jump into something else. I don't know. It's a free-flowing thing, man. I don't, back myself in a corner. But I think that's what I'm going to do next week, unless I get a guest. And in that case, if I get a guest, then I'll bring the guest to you. So that's what these summer formats are going to be about. Real quick, before I do wrap this podcast up, one thing that just popped in my head, the Patrick Durkin episode last week, where he came on and talked about his article that he wrote, is hunting too white. It touched a lot of nerves, and for the most part, I can say that I received civilized feedback. And when I say civilized, people articulated their points. Definitely not a lot of people saw the perspective that Patrick saw or agreed with some of the things that I had to say about, what Patrick saw. But it was the fact, that it was civilized and it didn't get out of hand. And man, I just appreciate that. We're not going to always agree. All right. But in not agreeing, like I said, we don't have to get ugly with one another. And for the most part, people kept it clean. I tried to articulate a few points. Some people didn't get it. But, what I really, want to say to everyone that's listening, or everybody that listened to that episode and maybe listening to this episode, thank you. It was one of the highest downloaded episodes that we've had so far. So as always on the Bryant Land Country Podcast, we appreciate your support. Now, that's going to be all for me this week. That's all I got for you guys. Like I said, I appreciate your support of the Bryant Land Country Podcast. We have had growth and downloads and listens every month, so hopefully we can keep that going here. Like I said, I appreciate you guys' support. Make sure if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you give us that 5-star rating and shoot us a review. We love to get those. Make sure you're checking out BryantLandCountry.com, getting your merch, reading the articles, listening to the podcast on there. And we will catch you guys next week here on another episode of the Bryant Land Country Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Bryant Land Country Podcast, hosted by AB3. Please leave us a positive review and 5-star rating on iTunes. Be sure to check out our podcast section on our website, BryantLandCountry.com, for previous podcasts. Check us out on Instagram at Official Bryant Land and Twitter at 3BryantLand. This has been an AB3 Media production. Join us next time for another edition of the Bryant Land Country Podcast.